So here's the real problem, the attraction. It's temporary. If you're in a scary situation, you get out of the situation, it goes away. It's only there as long as you need it to be able to take care of yourself. You cannot stay in that heightened stage because all kinds of things are happening in your body that will not sustain life. You're pulling away blood from your brain and it's going to your muscles so you can run. You're pulling away blood from your digestive system. You need to go back to like normal regulation in order to survive. But the thing is, a lot of people think that that's love. So they keep trying to reignite that and go back to it. Or they jump from man to man to man, to girl to girl to girl to girl. Now, you were talking about pornography addiction. That can also be part of that too. It depends how the feeling manifests on the person because it can be highly addictive. You enjoy that rush.
Dawn, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really excited to dive into your work and just your brain, your mind, and everything that you've really unpacked over the course of your career. Where I wanted to start with you here today, Dawn, is I came across something in your work that truly was fascinating to me. And I'm curious if you can kind of unpack this a little bit. What is it that we're able to tell about a man's commitment based on his saliva? And how did you get to this research?
Okay, so it actually was the U.S. Army that first discovered this. They were doing standard tests for men's health, and they started to find a pattern in his hormones. And the pattern, and they got to the point where they could actually predict if a guy was going to get a divorce. So depending on, it was basically these neurotransmitters of commitment or lack of commitment. So I like to call it more pursuit. That he goes into pursuit mode. So once he's in pursuit mode, it shows up on his tests. And that means he's actually interested probably in somebody else that he's pursuing. And that's why they end up in divorce. So Harvard did a couple more studies to follow up on it. And they found it to be true that in their tests, you can tell if a guy's in pursuit mode, according to a couple of biological markers. If he's in pursuit mode, he's not committed.
How are we defining pursuit here? Because I believe, obviously, testosterone being a primary, hormone for men, pursuit of many things is a masculine characteristic, I believe. And I think it's a very good one that men need to possess. Now, it doesn't always need to be pursuing of women, but pursuing of resources, pursuing of purpose, of mission. So is there a way that we're defining pursuit, and how are they able to tell a difference between if he's pursuing deeper things in life or pursuing like another relationship?
Well, this is courtship pursuit.
Okay.
Well, and it is in every other way, he's normal, right? We call it like settling down. So we kind of see this like settling down of his neurotransmitters. And if it gets ramped back up again, then he's in pursuit. But so a guy can be committed to a woman and still get a job, still pursuing starting a business, doing all these goals that he has. That won't affect it. It's only when he's interested in another relationship. And the funny thing is, if a man is single and he's not really interested in dating, he looks like he's in a committed relationship.
And what is it that we're looking at? Like, what is actually being tested here?
It's neurotransmitters and hormones. So we're looking for a specific pattern.
Got it. And I know you've done some research around this, and you've actually done some work with, would you call them patients or clients? What has been the result of some of your findings?
So I did an independent study at my university, and I found that it holds true. So I did a survey. I actually went around on campus, and I'm like, would you mind spitting in my little tube? Because it's basically a saliva sample. And are you in a relationship? If you are you committed, or do you cheat? And the funny thing was, I had one guy, he was like, I'm in a relationship, but I would cheat. He gave me his business card. I'm like, which was kind of funny. But the funny thing was that he showed up as committed because he wasn't actually actively pursuing someone. So it's at the moment. I can tell at the moment. So like you may have cheated in the past, or you may find somebody next week, but I can tell you where you're at right now. Here's the really weird thing. Gay men it doesn't work properly. They're always in pursuit mode.
Interesting. And what do you think that's revealing? I'm curious, your thoughts around that.
There is a saying sometimes in that community that there that commitment is not that they're what is it? I guess they're as committed as their opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
maybe there is something to say with that. I don't know. The problem with um, LBGQ type relationships is that there has not been enough research on it to be able to really say anything indicative, because um, they're starting to get more research on it, but there just hasn't been in the past.
Yeah, and that's what I love about you and your work is it's researched back, right? It's like, yeah, we have a lot of great, guests here that talk theories, they talk, real world experience, whether they're in the trenches. It's like you're in the trenches, but then you're also looking at the research. So I'm curious, Don, like, how did you get into this work? Like, how did you wake? Did you wake up one day and you're like, I want to be a love biologist? Take us a little bit through kind of your journey to getting to the, where you are today with being, really one of the world's most recognized love biologist. Would I be accurate in that statement?
Well, I don't know about world, but well, I guess I'm actually pretty big in Vietnam, so maybe world would apply.
Well, your TED Talks have garnered millions of views. So I'll give you that claim if you don't want to take it on yourself.
Well, I am a biology professor by profession, and I also got involved in relationships, um, mostly because I had bad relationships and I wanted to try to figure out how to get better relationships. So that was my first journey, and I ended up doing my first book was The Broken Picker Fixer for women attracted to the wrong
Okay.
men.
The broken picker fixer. Okay.
Yeah. And then I got into a relationship and I wanted to really understand love. So as a chronic researcher, I spent 5 years researching, going through all the stacks in the library of like research and discovering exactly how love worked, because I wanted to understand the difference between attraction, love, falling in love, and real love, long-term love. And that's how I got involved in it. And it kind of mushroomed from there.
Yeah. Are those the four stages then that you talk about? Are the attraction, love, falling in love, and then the long term commitment?
It's attraction, and then I call it like dating, which is where we start building up the neurotransmitters to fall in love.
Okay.
Then there's falling in love. That's about a 2-year time period where we see this crazy deactivation in parts of your brain. And then there's long-term love, and that's when your brain comes back. And a lot of people struggle with that 2-year part because all of a sudden your brain starts coming back and it reactivates. And one of the things that if I go off on a tangent, just reel me back in. But one of the things that happens when you fall in love is you lose part of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that judges the other person. So after about 2 years, it comes back. And then all of a sudden you start noticing things you didn't notice before. And I actually have a girlfriend who's going through this. She sat down with me. She goes, his chewing is driving me crazy. I'm like, that's so classic. It's the classic one.
So this is typically after 2 years. Well, let's go through each one of these because I want to spend a lot of time on here. I'm fascinated with the brain. It's a big part of the work that we do. Obviously, being an addiction, especially with pornography, the brain is what's hijacked. And so I really want to kind of see if we can kind of really unpack this. So can we go through each of these 4 stages and kind of talk about what is actually happening inside of the brain, at the brain level, at the neurotransmitter level? So number 1 with attraction, like, unpack that a little bit more. Like attraction, is that the first sight of like the physical being of the person, and then what's happening inside the brain there in that first stage of attraction?
Okay. So many of you probably have felt that attraction. Almost sometimes we call it love at first sight. You spot somebody from across the room, your heart starts beating faster, your pupils dilate, you get sweaty palms. You know that feeling?
Yeah. And I'm curious here, maybe if you could speak to, if at all possible, a lot of our men, that's going to be lust though, right? So is there a difference between, physical lust and then love, the feeling of love?
Absolutely. It's like night and day. So what that is it's a norepinephrine, which is part of the fight or flight response.
Adrenaline. It's a
Yeah,
precursor to adrenaline, right? Yeah.
exactly. So that's why your rapid heartbeat, the sweaty
Yeah.
palms, you're getting ready to either fight. So we call it the 4 Fs: fight, flight, flee, or 3 Fs. Oh no, fight, flight, freeze,
Freeze. Yeah.
or the other one is have sex. You can figure out the and so strangely, like why sex, right? In Mother Nature, again, I'm just the interpreter. I don't have all the answers, but we see this through the research. Mother Nature puts that in there. So why would it be? And the theory is that if you're in trouble, like if the species have gone to war, nobody's going to really want to have sex. So if you link sex to fear, now we're going to get some more babies to reproduce all these people that are lost during the war or the pandemic or whatever the thing is that's scaring everybody.
Wow. Okay. So first sight, physical attraction, heart rate elevated, sweaty palms, the noradrenaline is released. How long is this phase here? And then I'm assuming the dating part comes in like once you're getting to know the person. So how long is that attraction phase? And then what's happening now once we're into phase 2 with dating?
Okay, so here's the real problem with the attraction. It's temporary. It's momentarily temporary. It's just like if you're in a scary situation, you get out of the situation, it goes away. It's only there as long as you need it to be able to take care of yourself. You cannot stay in that heightened stage because all kinds of things are happening in your body that will not sustain life. You're shutting down, you're pulling away blood from your brain, and it's going to your muscles so you can run. You're pulling away blood from your digestive system, so you need to go back to like being normal regulation in order to survive. But the thing is, a lot of people think that that's love. So they keep trying to reignite that and go back to it. Or they jump from man to man to man to girl to girl to girl to girl. Or they get into these drama relationships because drama will heighten that norepinephrine back. So they get into these like on and off. So the classic example I used in my book was Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. It's an old example, but it was a crazy kind of relationship. They were together for a couple years and it was on again, off again. Finally, at the end of it, he spent the last 6 months in county jail because of domestic violence charges. And that's what can happen sometimes in those type of relationships. Now, you were talking about addiction in pornography addiction. That can also be part of that too, because it depends how the feeling manifests on the person. Because it can be highly addictive. You enjoy that rush, that adrenaline rush. It's the guys that jump out of planes and ride too fast on motorcycles too fast. Those guys love that, and they love that also when it comes to relationships sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, I know everybody probably has people in their life. They're like that couple. There's like, they're always fighting, but then they stay together. How much of this, is like the makeup sex, right? Culture. It's like, I don't know if you've like been in around, or I'm sure you've come across this, right? It's like these couples, it's like if things aren't going well, it's like somebody will spark a fight to initiate. Now you have the makeup sex. Like is kind of all the same processes kind of taking place here underneath the hood?
Absolutely. It's the same thing. And the thing about the makeup sex is you get, particularly for women, you get a rush of oxytocin at orgasm. It has this calming effect. But then you kind of start feeling a little bored. So you pick a fight again and you get the heightened up again. And so it's like, we up.
Yeah. I mean, I know your work is not centered around dating or approaching, but if we so men hearing this, like I talk a lot about like real-time self-regulation tools, right? Like things that we give our men, how to, bring your heart rate down, how to go from a parasympathetic down into a sympathetic, changing literally your physiological state. If we're aware of, that physical attraction creates that elevated state within us, what a proper thing for a man to do is bring his heart rate back down, but then see that as a signal like, hey, there's something here for maybe you to begin to potentially pursue with this woman.
That's exactly what it is. So Mother Nature, and the theory behind it is that love itself is risky and scary. So that attraction thing is Mother Nature's way of trying to get two people together long enough to get to know each other. And then when you go to the next phase, that's about getting to know each other. But sometimes we can circumvent the whole thing by getting into sex right away.
Right out of the gate. Yeah. And that's actually how I found you, was through Rob. That's his work, right? Is the waiting side of things. So once we're in the dating, we're getting to know the person. What's happening at the neurochemical level here? What neurotransmitters are being released, and what are the feelings, that everybody's feelings in those first, that honeymoon stage of a relationship?
Okay. So in the beginning, when we start dating someone, we get that little boost of dopamine. So like when we first see them, we go out with them, we kiss them, we hold their hand, we brush up against them. That's all dopamine.
And that becomes the addictive side of things. Like like you almost get addicted to the person from the beginning.
You keep coming back for more because you want to get that little dopamine boost. But at the same time, we're building up neurotransmitters to actually fall in love, or potentially we're building them up to fall in love. But here's the trick. Men and women build them up differently. So for women, it's dopamine and oxytocin. And so as she's dating and she kisses him a little, she gets a little oxytocin, a little dopamine, build. It's almost like a roller coaster. We get up to the top, and then we have this enzymatic effect. And we actually call it falling in love, which is kind of ironic because there's actually a drop. We see a drop in some of the neurotransmitters, some that are kind of weird that we see a drop in, but we do. So for women, it's dopamine and oxytocin. She gets a little each time she dates, but she gets a lot at orgasm. So if she has sex too quickly, she may fall in love really fast. But men, on the other hand, it's dopamine and vasopressin. Vasopressin is where he gets all excited, and it increases when he's sexually stimulated, but it drops quickly when he is sexually satiated. So it could actually circumvent him from falling in love if he gets in a sexual relationship too quickly.
God, that analogy that you shared there with the falling off of the high of the cliff, that is the actual love. It's like, oh my God, like that just like completely just shattered every paradigm around this. It's like coming off the high, that's when you actually begin to fall in love. So I guess that gets us into stage 3 here, which you said is like a 2 to 3 year long process. Talk about two years. Why is that the case? Why 2 years? And what does that mean to people that fall in love, air quoting here now, quicker, like 6 months? Is that not real love then in science, or have they sped that process up? So what's happening in that 2 to 3 or 2 year process of falling in love?
We have the attraction, then we have the dating, and then we have the falling in love. The falling in love is a 2-year thing. So it can happen in 2 months, 6 months, 2 years. It doesn't, the dating part is up here, and then the falling in love. So once you fall in love, once you get to that point, which is the third stage, that lasts about 2 years. And that's the one where we see a deactivation of the brain, parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. When it says love makes us stupid, it really kind of does. And we see a drop in serotonin levels. Serotonin is the hormone of happiness, which sounds really counterintuitive. You would think that happiness would skyrocket, but it actually drops. And the theory behind that is it drops to the level of someone with OCD. So that may be the obsessive compulsive part of keeping the two together.
Prefrontal cortex is shutting off literally like where we process, make, executive function. And then it's coming back on in the long term. So what's happening there in that phase 4? And I'm assuming this is the challenging part. This is why most relationship, half of marriages end in divorce. So yeah, what's going on here in this fourth stage?
So the fourth stage, your brain comes back online, and all of a sudden you get all these, we said the judgment comes back. You get these, you start seeing the person for who they are. Your hormones start, you don't, the obsession goes away. All these things that were kind of holding you together start reversing, and you're becoming normal again. So if a couple stays together, we see in the falling in love part, most of the activity is in the primitive part of the brain, in the center part of the brain. It's basically associated with carnal processes, bodily functions, right? But now we see activity in, once you go to the fourth stage of true love, we see the activity in the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. So we see it's next to neurotransmitters of ethics and morals. It's a more and brotherly love. It's a different type of love. It changes and it's more wholesome. We also see activity in the back by the receptors for actually like it's like heroin, because of the receptors that it's hitting is more calming. People that are in loving relationships live longer. They're healthier because they have this calming effect. The falling in love part, the third stage, we actually see activity in the parietal lobes, more like cocaine, like a cocaine addiction. So it's like falling in love is cocaine, being in love is heroin.
So I question here would then maybe be people that struggle with love addiction or are love addicts. Are they addicted to the stage 3, the falling in love, or is it typically the fourth stage, or is it kind of depends?
It could be 1 or 3.
Okay, so it could be attraction addiction, like they're probably visually stimulated, so they're addicted to that noradrenaline, that fight or flight, like that rush. Or the other one would be the dopamine, the pleasure, which you're getting in stage 3.
What happens a lot with the fall, when they fall in love, if they're in that phase, it shuts off part of their brain. The other part of the brain that it shuts off is called the amygdala. The amygdala is the part of the brain that sounds the alarm. So if you have a lot of anxiety, your brain goes dormant during those 2 years. So it's a very comfortable place, right? So after it starts coming back online, that's one of the things that actually pulls people apart, is that if you have any unresolved issues, if you've got past trauma, your amygdala is bigger. So it really starts bothering you. So so some people find it easier to get out of that relationship, go into another one, fall in love again, and they just repeat 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. Every 2 years they're in a different relationship because it's more comfortable for them and they don't understand why.
How quickly can somebody go through phase 1 into 2 and then into 3? If 2 is really dating, I mean, you're getting to know somebody. Like if you're quick out of the gate, seeing this person, maybe having coffee a couple times a week, like you're going on multiple dates a week, like how quickly are you getting into this 2-year process of falling in love?
It can be very quick, especially for women. If she becomes sexual, she has an orgasm, bingo, she can fall in love quick because it's associated with oxytocin. So a guy, on the other hand, if he thinks she's out of his league, he can fall in love faster too, because it skyrockets his vasopressin.
So this would be like a guy that like met a woman and feels like she's way out of my league. There's no way. So I need to hold onto her. So I'm going to like speed all this up.
No, that's not, he's not doing anything. It's his hormones that do it. His hormones shoot up, the vasopressin. If he's like, oh my God, this is like the greatest woman in the world, he's like, boom, he's like so charged, so sexually attracted, and he's in.
Now, what if somebody is quote unquote, not seeking or emotionally unavailable or not looking for love? How does that play into all of this?
Well, if you don't have to be looking for love. And actually, you said in the beginning about men pursuing goals and all this. A lot of men will avoid relationships because they have other goals. I want to finish school. I got to get my business started. I got all this, and they'll actually push off the relationship. So that is um, that person is going to be emotionally unavailable. Technically, he's going to be hormonally unavailable too.
And then, so, I mean, a woman that would normally spark all of this, like if he's in that stage, like do these processes not begin? How much in control are we of what's actually happening here?
Well, you are in control of your brain, right? So it really is about what you're thinking. So if you're thinking about something else, a job or starting a business, and you're focused on that, you don't really have room for the rest of this other stuff that's going on. But maybe you meet a woman and you're just like, whoa, she just stops you dead. Now, all of a sudden, you start changing your thinking. You can still fall in love. There's no like hard and fast rules. It's all what's happening with you.
Got it. No, that's good. So you had mentioned that, a lot of the reasons why you got into this is due to your own previous, maybe failures in some of your relationships. How did understanding, these stages change the way that you approached dating in your life?
Well, once I understood what I was doing in the beginning, I realized like I was doing the attraction thing, and once I realized what that was, there's no, it takes the fun out of it. It also takes the frustration out of it too, because you're like, what am I doing? But most of my research, I was actually in a relationship with my husband, so it didn't. It changed in a way. What happened was I found out I was actually a little bit too controlling, because I'm coming in with all I'm coming in going, so I've got the data. This is how love works. And that doesn't work very well in a relationship. So we ended up actually breaking up. And right after I published the book. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a love expert. You can't break up with me. You can't be a single love expert hitting the streets. But I took a very important break during that time period, and I learned a lot about myself. And that was critical for, it was kind of like more of a spiritual journey. And you said earlier, this is more of you do a kind of a Christian base or a spiritual base. And what I learned was that is the most important starting place. And you would think from somebody that does science that wouldn't go together. But a lot of the spirituality actually links well with the science. For example, I talked about the amygdala that can be large with people with trauma. Meditation in those type of practices like prayer can actually shrink the amygdala, which can get in the way if you are trying to find love. So the taking the time also had a calming effect. So then I wasn't more anxious about the relationship, and I was also able to reevaluate. So that was the important for the fourth phase, because love is about the fourth phase is really about what you think. And if you think critically, you're going to sever the relationship. So I had to decide what I really wanted in a relationship. And then once my now husband came back, I realized that that's what I wanted. And I was able to put aside the petty little things and focus on what I wanted in the relationship.
And is that where people say, like real love is a choice that we must make daily? And it's a verb. It's done through action.
Yes, it is. It's what you think. If you're going to focus on and I apologize because I deal mostly with women, but if you focus on he didn't pick up his socks and he left them on the floor and that's not going to be well for your relationship. And actually, that was part of my problem in my past in our relationship in the past. He would drop things on the floor, and I had to actually rethink it, and that would get me upset. And finally, I got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm going to pick it up, and this is my act of love for him today. And it totally changed the way I thought about it. And the irony was, after I started doing that, he stopped dropping things on the floor. I don't know. I was doing, where's my love? I got to do something else now.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny. I mean, funny how that works. I'm thinking of all the men out there that are hearing this. It's like, theirs would be, she's not sleeping with me. She doesn't love me, or, she's, talking back to me, or she's not respecting me when I get home after a long day of work. Those would be a lot of the things that the men would say. And it's like, no, that's not her not loving you. That's your signal to be, how can you love her maybe a little bit better? And then when you start to be proactive in the way that you're loving your wife, you're kissing her first thing when you walk in, like you're providing for her, you're getting the things done that she's been on you about. When you start loving her that way, she starts respecting you a whole lot more. So yeah. And I'm not surprised the spiritual journey that you had to go on. We've had some of the world's most amazing neuroscientists on. And I don't know if it's just how I pick guests. It always seems to lead. The science conversation leads us to the spiritual side of things. So that's awesome that was your journey as well. Now, talk to me about the Coolidge effect and how that impacts men. What is it? We've talked about it a couple of times, but I'd love for you to maybe define it. And then how is that fallen into everything that we've been discussing here?
Okay, so the Coolidge effect. Do you mean tell the whole story? Okay, the Coolidge effect comes from President Calvin Coolidge. So the story goes that Calvin Coolidge was visiting a turkey farm or a chicken farm, and with his wife. And his wife was up ahead, and she was looking at all the birds, and this one rooster kept getting really amorous with this hen. So she goes to the attendant. She goes, "Is that rooster like that all the time?" And he says, "Yes, ma'am, all day, every day." And she goes, "Oh, really? You have to tell President Coolidge that." So the attendant goes back to the president, and he goes, "President Coolidge, your wife wanted me to point out this rooster to you." And the president looks over, and he's being quite amorous with the hen, and he goes, "Is he like that all the time?" And the attendant says, "Yes, sir, all day, every day." And the president goes, "Okay, son, one more question." He goes, "What is this, President?" He goes, "Is it the same old hen every day?" He goes, "No, sir, it's a new hen every day." And he goes, "Run back and tell Mrs. Coolidge that." So the point is, Mrs. Coolidge wanted to be loved more, and he's like, "No, I want variety. The rooster wants variety. So take what you can get. Take what you get because I'm staying with you." But the point is, the Coolidge effect is about dopamine. So what happens is, I can take a box of rats and female rats and throw a male rat in, and he'll have sex with all of them. And then he'll go in the corner and lay there exhausted. And the females can lick and entice and try to get him going, but he won't budge unless I put in a new rat. I put a new fresh female, he's up and at him. And we see a spike in the dopamine, and that's called the Coolidge effect.
Yeah, and that brings right to the problem that the majority of the men that we work with and serve in a big portion of this audience that is struggling with pornography. It's that novelty, of like every new video is going to be a new woman. There's going to be new visual stimulation. Why is it that, Dawn, that the men's brain seems to be so much more visually stimulated in comparison to a woman?
Because you guys have 25% more neurons in the visual cortex area.
Say that again.
Because you men have 25% more neurons in the visual cortex area.
Yeah, so there is a difference between a man and a woman. Many of them, but there's one. So that obviously leads us to the male attraction at first. So how is a woman's first stage of attraction then? If she's not being visually attracted to a man, what are the signals that maybe she is looking for?
So that's interesting. When it comes to attraction, men are mostly visually stimulated because of that. However, females use all the senses. So she uses visual, but she also uses, it's not really scent, but she uses her nose. She can use the surroundings actually, and there's a study that showed, like, if you're holding a cup of coffee when you meet someone, you'll actually think of them as being warmer and more caring. So like the environment has an effect. So one of the things that she does is the major histocompatibility complex. I keep touching my nose because it's sensed by the nose, but it's not really smell. It's actually your immune system. So women are more attracted to men of opposite immune system. So the theory is that if you have a baby because of this union, they're going to have a better complement of immune cells and will be healthier.
What do you mean by opposite of immune system?
So the white blood cells put off the major histocompatibility complex, and it would be opposite genetically.
Got it. Okay. And
So
there's
if,
no,
if we'll put it like if your immune system is pretty close to my immune system, it doesn't help me, right? Because we're too close. That's one of the reasons why you're not supposed to be with cousins. But if I get somebody of an opposite immune system, opposite genetically, I'm going to get more diversity in my immune system, and I may get better complements of immune cells, and then I can fight off disease better.
got it. And this is obviously all happening at an unconscious level with a woman. Like she's not in her mind thinking like, God, that guy's got the opposite immune
He's
system
got great genes.
with
I
me.
might say he's got great genes, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a different type of genes.
Yeah. I was a little upset when you said that, you can't just take this data and like take it out on the date and be like, no, this is what the science is telling us. That was the only reason I had you here today. Like I'm a single guy, like I'm looking to kind of, find the potential, partner for life. I was, and I was like, yep, like this is what's going to happen here. Like, but clearly that's not the best way to approach a date.
She's right here. Do you want her name?
Please, we'll make sure to get that after the talk. You have another book that was a big one, and it was Men Chase, Women Choose.
That's the one we're talking about. That has the 4 stages.
That is the 4 stages. Okay, so what does that mean then? That men chase and women choose?
Well, genetic or biologically, there is a principle that holds that the species that takes the highest risk will be the one that is chased, where the species that, or the, not the species, but the individual, and I'm apologizing, I can hear my bird in the background. The male or female that takes the highest risk is going to be more selective than the one that takes less of a risk. So we see it in every species. It's across the board. And it mostly is males chasing females, but ones like the seahorse, the seahorse actually carry the babies for a while. So he's actually more selective.
No, I love that. Love that. I want to go back to addiction here a little bit. Love addiction specifically in general. As maybe some of the guys are hearing this, they're like, yeah, I felt that. I've experienced, the attraction. I know exactly what she's talking about there, like in the pursuit, and then the falling in love. Maybe this is, not right up your alley, but are there signals that men can be looking for maybe in their own life, way of thinking, way of handling certain situations that would trigger like, hey, maybe you have a problem with being addicted to that part of this stage?
Well, if they're having any problems in their life, if they're neglecting any other part of their life, then that's a signal that there's a problem. Or if you're suffering some consequences, you're like, my 7th wife just walked out on me.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew that answer. I mean, somebody that gets interviewed all the time about addiction, like we have a clear definition of it's the continued or repeated use of substance and or behavior despite negative consequences. So if you have a problem, if there's a compulsive behavior or an addiction in your life, you're probably already aware of it. You've been doing this for years, and obviously, like I said, it's impacted and reached millions of people. What have been the responses? I'm sure you get messages all the time, like with people reaching back out to you, like, Don, your talk helped me, your books have helped me find the right person. What have been some of, the heartwarming stories that you've received from listeners and readers of your work?
Oh, I haven't had any like super lately, but we did have a couple of women that actually got over, I think the pandemic kind of slowed stuff down because people weren't getting out and meeting as much, but I've had several women that got over, they understood the attraction part and stopped falling for that and held on long enough to get into a relationship and then get married. So I got a bunch of wedding proposals and stuff a couple years ago, like I said, before the pandemic. Yesterday, I just got a text from Vietnam, and a girl at the university wants me to come and speak with her school. I'm like, I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get over there, but I would love to do that. So I get a lot of really kind of cool responses.
Yeah. And that's just, proving what we said there with you being, globally, known and recognized there at the beginning, right? You get invites to go speak in Vietnam. Um, that's awesome. So it sounds like, I mean, your work has led to, helping a lot of women wait, right? Obviously that's Rob's work is really, bringing light to that topic. But something I believe as well is sex is something that is for the marriage bed. And it seems like you've saved a lot of women from jumping into bed too quickly with the wrong men.
Well, what happens a lot of times with women is that she'll jump into and I shouldn't say this probably in this on this show, but if a guy can get a woman to jump into a relationship, in a sexual relationship quicker, she's kind of like going to be stuck on him for a while. And these women would be stuck in this relationship. The guys are not interested in it. He calls her up every once in a while out of the blue at like 10:30 at night and says, come on over. And next thing you know, she's in her car and she's like, why am I doing this? I know it's not right for me, but she's still driving over. And then the next week, he's rattling around his trash cans, and trying to peek in his window to see what he's doing because she is addicted. So, or not addicted, but she is like gone into the um, obsessive mode. So I guess that could be addictive too. But I've helped a lot of women stop that. It's kind of like it's a little counterintuitive for the guy, but if the guy's looking, those are usually not satisfying relationships that you get women addicted to you. I've had a few guys that came to me and said, I would do this. I would get them, to have sex with me. Then I didn't want them. And then they would come around all the time. I feel terrible. What do I do? And it's like, well, yeah, you got to stop having sex right away.
Yeah. I mean, my advice would to that guy, figure out why that pattern is reoccurring and figure out why you feel the need to have these women become obsessed with you. And that was your journey, right? It's like you had to step back, go on your own spiritual journey, get to know yourself so much better. And then with this new tools, plus a deeper understanding of who you were, now you're ready to enter back into the marketplace, the dating marketplace. Too many men out there are going out trying to find a woman when they're broken in and of themselves. So they're going to attract broken women in an unhealthy way.
We do attract at our own level. That's another thing about attraction. We are attracted to about the level we're at. So if you want to attract somebody better, you get better.
Now, what's your thoughts? Hypergamy. Have you heard of hypergamy?
No.
Like women attracted to like across and up of a social hierarchy. So women attraction to, typically, men that are maybe socially higher than her, maybe make more money, have better financial resources.
Yes. That's normal. That's going to be, so every species is going to be attracted to the most colorful bird, the biggest gorilla. We're always looking for that alpha male.
Yeah, it's the peacock feathers, right? It's like the male peacock is going to demonstrate, look at me. That is played out, in humans with, look at my Ferrari, look at my, my big fancy house, look at my, most expensive $100,000 watch or whatever. So same. That's why I love science so much.
It's baked into the equation.
It's incredible. Now, pornography. So with attraction, like if men are going out there every day and they're pursuing pornography, they're getting maybe not the same attraction, but they're seeking these attractions with these women on the screen. What is that then doing to his ability to create real attraction out in the real world?
So if let me see if I can, it basically is kind of anesthetizing them a little bit. So let's say if I walk up to you and I hit you on the arm, it hurts, right? You feel it. If I keep doing it, after a while, it doesn't hurt as much. It like dulls the pain. So that's what they're basically doing, is that your body, when you first get that dopamine, it's like high. But then when you keep doing it, it like lowers and it feels like you got to do more and more just to get back to that high. And you're basically kind of just numbing yourself in a way. So if an actual live girl shows up that has, that's not photoshopped, there's no interest at all.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from, countless men, Dawn, that are wrapped up in a pornography addiction, and they're like, could have a beautiful woman literally walk into a room and place, her hand on my arm, just a soft, gentle, intimate touch, and it's like there was zero feeling of that taking place, where beautiful woman touch an arm, like you should go into that kind of elevated fight or flight, at least initially, like, oh, wow. Like, and then be able to process and kind of bring yourself back down. And I've talked a lot about, the super normal stimulus, right? Like I believe that what we're seeing in a lot of young women today with the enhanced lips, the enhanced large, massive butts, and all these kind of things are a byproduct of porn culture because men are getting desensitized to real natural beauty.
Right. Desensitized. That was the word I was looking for. In order to get over any type of addiction, you have to do a detox. The detox gets you back chemically normal. You can't just stop. Then the next day you're going to be normal. You have to almost like go through this. You have to allow your body to reset itself.
Reset. Yeah. No, that's our work, right? Is the rebooting from a pornography addiction. I mean, literally our program, our coaching is called Reboot Your Life. So it's not just rebooting the brain, but it's kind of hitting a reset, reboot button on every stage and area of your
Well, you
life.
have
So
to chemically. You have to chemically, just like this. Your body adjusts to hormones. So the classic example is diabetes. If you eat a lot of sugar, right, your body adjusts to the sugar. And how it adjusts to the sugar is it removes the receptors for the sugar. And then that goes into type 2 diabetes. So how do you get out of diabetes is you stop eating the sugar and your body will reset itself and it'll put back those receptors once you don't have as much sugar that's setting those receptors off.
yeah, so staying there on the reboot reset, maybe somebody's been in a long-term relationship. They've been in stage 3, stage 4. So they've had this massive influx. They've gone through all this process. Heart gets broken, which I want to ask you that question next. Heart gets broken. They need to reboot, reset before they go back out and try to get attracting to somebody. Correct? What's
Absolutely.
that time? What's that time period?
6 months to a year actually is a really good time period because particularly if you get your heart broken, if you break up in the middle of the falling in love part where you're in that falling in love, your brain is still deactivated and your serotonin level is still dropped. That's why it's so painful because serotonin is a hormone of happiness. So as soon as you break, you go into depression because you're already there. But because you're in a relationship, it's more obsession, not depression. So you need a good time to allow your serotonin level to get back up. One one of the things that you can do to help facilitate that whole process and go faster is to find activities that you like for yourself that are wholesome. Like maybe take up a new do snorkeling or skiing. Do something new that's fun, and it helps get your brain back. You're not just sitting there thinking about because when you rehash, oh, that whole stuff, it doesn't move you.
Well, I would say probably in addition to that, finding activities that you enjoy. I mean, a simple gratitude practice will sometimes change your state, and even doing service for others. So you're feeling bad about yourself. Look at who in your life can you go do something good for. Reach out to the community center. Go serve at your church. Go mentor big brothers, big sisters. Like you can't feel bad about yourself while you're trying to lift somebody else up. So there's a real time hack. Um, the science of
Years
heartbreak.
I was going to tell you a story real fast. Years ago, before I got into the relationship I was with now, I was struggling with like up and down all these relationships. And I ended up trying to take some time, but I started feeling sorry for myself because Valentine's Day was coming up. And that's a big one for women, right? So here comes Valentine's Day. You can see it coming down the pipe. So that day I picked up a paper and it was reading about like these homeless people and that they needed stuff. So on Valentine's Day, I packed my car. At the time, I had a truck. I packed my truck up with water, supplies, tarps, whatever I had, and I drove it down there. And the feeling of like feeling sorry for myself completely went away. Because you're handing out water to people that live in a cardboard box.
And they're just so grateful for you to be there. Like the love that you feel from them, different type of love, but like, oh my God, no, that's amazing. That's actually a big part of our program, Don, with helping these guys get out of addiction is like, we want them out there serving. We want them living in a state of gratitude. So that's
One
amazing.
of the things that happened was this girl next couple in my apartment complex gave me a tarp. And I didn't have any use for the tarp, so I stuck it in the car and I kind of forgot about it. And this woman walks up and she goes, are you going to hand out that tarp? And I said, oh, yes, here, take the tarp. And she goes, thank you so much. I have a roof now. And it was like, I got chills. I still get chills when I say this story because it was something I was dismissing and it was so critical in her life.
Yeah, when we're going through these things and feelings, like we get so wrapped up in just this feeling, this emotion, like we shut off the entire world, realizing like the fact that we're even experiencing this feeling and emotion is something we should be grateful for, because there's a lot of people that don't even have that opportunity to have connection with another human being because they're thinking about protecting themselves from
The
rain
elements.
and thunder and the elements. Yeah. So no, that's awesome. How about, so talk about the science of heartbreak. Is that something that you've studied? Is it these processes, neurochemicals, like in reverse, or is there something else kind of going on the heartbreak side of things?
So I don't have as much data on heartbreak, but I do know that there are some, and I can't remember what exactly the chemicals are that are released when you break up that are actually similar to like the heart attack, like some of the chemicals that are released during a heart attack. So there is actually it's a heartbreak, and that's why they call it a heartbreak. So a lot of our colloquial words like falling in love and heartbreak and stuff actually pan out in science. So you're like, it makes a lot of sense.
No, I love that. Love that so much. Don, this has been fascinating. I've really enjoyed your time here today. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
I don't know.
I normally don't ask that question, but I've been asked it a couple of times here myself recently. So I just wanted to see kind of where you're at. Well, I know you got some
love,
new.
love is possible. Love, true love is absolutely possible. Oh, you know what? One thing here's interesting. So that this might help you. People ask me all the time about arranged marriages. Do you have to go through all these phases? And you don't ever have to really go through all these phases. So that's how arranged marriages work. These two people decide to make a commitment to each other, and then they just do it, and they go straight to phase 4, where they go to long-term love. So it's
Once
really
again,
all about what you're thinking.
yeah, once again, love is a choice, and it's an action, it's a verb, it's something you live out um, daily. Yeah, there's feelings associated to it. We've hopefully done a good job of explaining that here today of what it is you're feeling. But at the end of the day, like if you don't make that conscious choice, you're never going to experience the true joy of real love.
Mhm. Yes, well said.
Awesome, Don. Well, it's been a pleasure here today. Tell the audience where they can connect with you, where they can find your books, any exciting things up and coming for you. And we'll bring today's conversation to a close with our last question.
Well, I got married, so my name is Dawn Maslar-Biggie. So if you want to find me online, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and my website is Dawn Maslar-Biggie. But if you want to find my book, it's just Dawn Maslar. And those are found in every, Amazon booksellers.
Yeah, and guys, we'll get all the info there and plug down in the show notes. We'll have our website linked up. We'll have our social media handles. We'll have a link to our Amazon pages as well. So as we bring today's conversation to a close, Dawn, we like to end every podcast with the same question. Obviously, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. For me, when I talk about living a superhuman life, it's coming from the place first that you understand and believe that you are here for a purpose. So I do believe that there's a divine calling on each one of our lives. The second part, though, is we must be very intentional and aggressive in our daily actions of bringing that purpose to the world. But I like to get the guest take. So, Dawn Maslar-Biggie, as we bring today's conversation to a close, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Enjoying every moment. It's simple as that. You don't have to. I don't think I used to think I had to like pursue a purpose, but I think God, whatever you want to call, just wants me to be happy.
Love that. Very simple words. Enjoy every moment. Don, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing. Guys, we'll also get her TED Talk. She's got I think it's 5-6 million at this point. Incredible TED Talk. Very succinct in like 14 minutes, breaks all this down. So if you enjoyed this talk, guys, make sure to go check out her TED Talk. But we want to thank you for tuning in today, guys. If you're new here, welcome to the Superhuman Life Podcast. We have seen some tremendous growth, and it's all because of you listeners and viewers out there. So you want to support this show, you can help us in one of two ways. First off, leave us a 5-star rating right there on Apple, whatever platform you are listening to. But more important, there's somebody that's going in, or somebody in your life that's going through maybe some struggles with love, maybe some struggles with finding or seeking love, or they keep going through these cycles, do us a favor, but do them the blessing by sharing today's conversation with them. But for Don, Maslar-Biggie, Frank, Chris, host of Superman Life, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.